Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Love Lands. We're back again with another episode of Love is Blind UK. This is actually the final episode, so I wanted to do something slightly different. Still all about love and relationships, but this time round I think I wanted to focus on one particular person who I think this person kind of stole people's hearts as they watched on from the beginning to the end, and we saw a real development with this individual in the show. And if you've watched it from beginning to end, you would know that's Demi. Demi was in a relationship with Ollie in the pods, but she also had a bit of a triangle with Catherine, who was also her friend in the women's quarters. So as I always say, guys, I do not know these people. This is based off of all the things that we've seen on the show, and a few interviews that she's done outside of the show. I think I've only seen one interview that she's done actually. So this conversation is just based on that. It's just based on the show, what we've seen so far, and what she said about the show so far online, and all those links I'll put in the notes. This is purely for entertainment purposes only, not here to bash anyone. We're not here to just speak badly of anything. It's just for our learning and development, and just to learn some new things that we could change within our own lives to kind of better ourselves and better ourselves in relationships. That is all we do on Love Learns. We're just here to learn about love and how we can use those tools to help in our own life and our own lifestyles. So on that note, let's get started with Demi. We first see her entering the pods, and she speaks to Ollie and has a relationship with him, but she straight away tells us she's like the sporty type. She's into hanging out with other guys. She tends to be friend zoned before she can get into a relationship with guys, because she has that kind of vibe, and she just enjoys spending time with guys. And when we see her journey throughout, you kind of understand, because the relationship that she has with her dad is so close, and I can imagine the dad empowered her to do anything that her brother could do. So she kind of just had that kind of vibe with her. And it's a very interesting show, because in the beginning we see how she is in the quarters. In the quarters we see she's very reserved, like when it comes to the dating aspect of things. But she's like one of the first to kind of encourage people. She's one of the first to kind of be vulnerable with people about her issues, but not in a sense of about the guy, but more about herself. She gives more away about herself than she does about the relationship that she's in. She's very protective of her relationships, but she's also very open with herself. In one of her VTs, she does mention that she's a people pleaser, and I think being on the show kind of helped her learn to have her own voice in that sense, because I see her struggling with the people pleasing when Catherine asks if she's been on a date, if someone else has been on a date with Ollie, and telling her, oh, I really like Ollie, but she's also telling Catherine to stop, like, leave it, like, just keep that to yourself kind of thing. So she was trying to protect herself by not saying, oh, I'm seeing Ollie and I really like him, but more of a place of, oh, I don't want to talk about this, so I'm just going to kind of shut you down a little bit so that we can all talk about our experiences and everything. Yes, we know you like him, but I'm not going to say who I like. So she was still keeping things very close to her chest when it came to that. But as the time went on, and her relationship with Ollie started to develop, we see her opening up to a few people in the ladies' quarters about that relationship. She speaks to, I think her name is Ella, who's like, she seemed to be all the girls' favourite in the quarters where she was talking to everyone. And she was telling her about how she feels like her insecurities are going to get in the way of him liking her. When she said this, at first she said, I hope he likes me for who I am, but then she quickly changed her language to my insecurities, because my insecurities, I hope. And from her shifting her language, what she was doing was establishing that I'm not internalizing this. I'm not going to internalize this as mine. I know I have insecurities, so my insecurities can hold on to this. I'm not going to hold on to this. I'm going to stay strong in my confidence. And you can see that she's done work around establishing what her insecurities are, establishing what her triggers are, and working around them in a way that doesn't put other people down, but also gives her the security that she needs. When we see her in the quarters, at first it feels very overwhelming for her, and we see that in the beginning, but over time she starts to find her own voice in that. And she had an interview with on one of the podcasts with, I think his name is Will. I'll put the link in the description. She had a conversation with him, and in that conversation she mentions how she felt a little bit insecure in that environment because it felt like a load of girls. And she also mentioned it in the show as well with when her friends came to visit. She was like, I felt very overwhelmed in the beginning. I wasn't telling anyone anything, but over time I think we see her developing in that space, because there's so many big characters in the quarters, and also when they went off to the retreat as well, there were so many big characters. You kind of saw her going into herself. And I think her and Ollie had similar experiences with this whilst they were on the retreat, where the people that they got solace from throughout the experience in the quarters were no longer there. They didn't have their phones to contact friends and family. The people that they were close to in the quarters weren't on the retreat, so the only people they could be close to were each other. So it gave them a sense of, oh, we could only rely on each other, which kind of isolated them a little bit. But over time we see them kind of like, when they're in their own space, they're doing great. But when they're around other people, there's a sense of like too much is going on. There's a sense of Ollie was feeling overstimulated with everything that was going on and who was around, and the new faces and everything that was going on. Whereas Demi went into herself because she knew that there was a comparison happening. There could be a comparison happening between her and Catherine in the sense of Ollie, because her insecurities would see that her insecurities might say, oh, Catherine's a better looking girl than me. Maybe he likes Catherine more because she's prettier than me, she's thinner than me, she's got this than me, she's done that. But over time, we see her calm down in herself. And we see this happening, when Catherine has a conversation with her, you can see that walk slowly coming down, because she puts across how she felt about that situation. She tells her, like, I would have preferred you coming to ask me or speak to me before speaking to Ollie, so that I know what you're going to speak about, because you doing that, you pulling him away without speaking to me, I had all sorts of things going on through my head about what could be happening. So she had already established what triggered her about that situation and verbalized it to Catherine when they did have that conversation. And when she did have the conversation with Ollie straight after he had spoken to Catherine, I think her insecurities were a little bit more heightened, because Ollie was like, yeah, I'm good, dismissing how she was feeling, which made her think, oh, is there something going on? What is the issue? So I think the next day when Ollie and in the evening when Ollie and Demi are alone, they do have a conversation, and Demi's like, what happened? Like, let's talk about it. And Ollie tries to dismiss it again, but instead she speaks up for herself. And I think she's really already started doing the work, but I think her doing the work helped hold her in that situation, because I feel like when she was in that space, she felt a little bit overwhelmed, but because she had the tools from the work that she had already done, she could regain some sort of strength to use those tools, and when she did start using those tools, you could see that there was a little bit more ease around her, around Ollie, around Catherine, around everyone else, because she had started to learn that there's certain things that I am dealing with that are my insecurities, and my insecurities are separate to me. That does not make me who I am. It's a part of me, but it doesn't have to be all of me, and other parts of me can speak up in this time, not my insecurities. So she's kind of established what her insecurities are, and I think if you are someone who does have insecurities, being very aware of what those insecurities are, asking your questions of, why do I feel this way when I'm around this person, or what kinds of things about me am I saying about myself that could encourage these insecurities? What kinds of language am I around that kind of encourages this insecurities? And moving from those kinds of languages and understanding that by feeding that language, you're also feeding the insecurity, and by feeding the insecurity, the more you're suppressing the other parts of you that could be speaking life into the relationship that you do have with Ollie, or the kind of personality you have that does shine in a room, or which we see her do. She minimizes her personality when she is in the bigger picture of everyone else, because her insecurity in that moment was, oh, everyone's going to think Catherine's better looking than me, so if I retreat, then maybe I won't be putting too much on me for them to think that I am doing this and this. So I think with time you start to establish what the insecurity is, what triggered that insecurity is also another thing. With her, in the early beginnings, we see it's a body image. It's a body image issue that she's dealing with, and we see this because she has trauma around relationships that have broken because of her endometriosis. And endometriosis is a severe menstrual cycle that some women do have, and it's one that comes with a lot of pain. It comes with a lot of mood swings, a lot of weight gain, and all of these things can put a pressure on a partner if they don't know how to deal with that efficiently. So with her going through all these changes and her having trauma around people leaving her because of that thing, she felt less than, and a core belief that came out of that was, I'm not enough because I might not be able to have kids. I'm not enough because I put on weight, my weight fluctuates. I'm not enough because I could be having mood swings at different times of the month. So with all this information, sometimes by continually telling yourself I'm not enough, you're feeding that insecurity and you're feeding that part of you. Yes, you do have endometriosis, but there's other parts of you that people are attracted to, people enjoy being around. So if that is also other parts of you, maybe focusing on the other parts of you that could bring life into relationships. And by Ollie speaking into like the question around kids, it kind of reassured her that, oh, because he's answered this question this way, that means he has a higher level of empathy around people with this kind of issue. And so I think by Ollie also having that kind of relationship around her, there was a sense of, actually, there are men who are open to this kind of, who are understanding about these kinds of things. There are men who are open to adoption, there are men who are open to understanding that I might not be able to have kids. So I think with her being relaxed around that insecurity about the endometriosis, she was able to kind of sit in her, in the other parts of her, the funny, playful, and we see over time, we see how much light and energy she has. And even the girls were like, oh, when they had moved from the retreat to having a mixer in London, we see how she's shifted, her energy has shifted, because there's been a lot more intimacy between her and Ollie, not just physically, but it seemed like her being away from other people gave her a grounding for her to establish her relationship with Ollie. Whereas when they were in the retreat, that was the first time they had seen each other since the reveal, and they didn't even travel to Greece together. It was kind of like Greece, London, Pods, London, and then Greece. And then when they got to Greece, they were put in a room together, and then that was it. So they hadn't established that physical grounding between the two of them and what each other needed in that space, which we see develop over time, but we don't see it on the cameras, but we do see it through her actions and the way she's behaving. Because at the mixer, she's very relaxed. Everyone's like, what happened? Did you guys forget physical? Like, there was no answers to those questions, because she tells them, get out of my business, it's not your business. Which I love, because it is their business, but people could see a shift. And I think that shift just came from them being secure in who they were as a couple, and them both reassuring each other about where they stood in the relationship. And I think through that establishment, we see them being more playful. We see them exploring how they see each other in the real world, and we see a little bit of parent-child relationship in some aspects with Demi and Ollie, because we see Demi try to parent Ollie when they're in the supermarket, and we see her like trying to get the stuff, but Ollie's kind of like picking and like moving around because of his ADHD. At this point, she didn't know that he had ADHD. So when she did notice that, he's like, oh no, it's fine, like I could do this, and then like laughed it off. But when she noticed these things, she did like put a question mark to it in her head, and then when the time was appropriate, she would have a conversation about it. She wasn't very forceful in that like shopping trip as to why do you keep on doing this, or not coming off in a judgmental way, but she was very empathetic about the situation and just came with curiosity. Her idea of his behavior was, oh, not why do you do this, but it was more of a, I've noticed you do this, is there a reason you do this? To give him the space to explore his own things, and be open with her, rather than her making assumptions that he might be this, he might be that, or oh, I've worked with kids with this, so that means he has this, so I'm just going to label him this. But giving him the opportunity to tell his story and be open to exploring that with him, and allowing him to see that part of him. She was very open about her endometriosis in the pods, because she knew that it could be a deal breaker for some people. Whereas Ollie wasn't very open about his ADHD in the pods, but because she was around him and was very observant of him, she was able to pick those signs up and reflect it back to him, so that he could let her know what was going on. And even if he didn't know what was going on, the fact that she noticed those things made him feel seen, made him feel empowered to say something, rather than just judging him for his behavior. And I think that's one reason we liked Demi so much, because she was very much curious about things happening, and she was very much empowering people, not just Ollie in his relationships, but we also see empowerment in the quarters when she was speaking to Tasha, when she had the conversation with Tom and she was about to go home. She was very much pouring in life into her, telling her like, you're so worth it, you deserve so much, you're beautiful inside and out. And she was just pouring so much love into her that it's so warm to see someone who just doesn't straight away write someone off because of where they're at, but kind of like encourages them and helps them to see that part of them is not the only part of them. She really explores with people who they are and does the same with herself, I think. Even though she's critical of herself, she's very much encouraging to others. And I think throughout the journey, we slowly see the shift of critical Demi to herself, slowly being compassionate and being graceful to herself. As she does this, we see it become more and more solid, because she finds her crew, and she also finds herself like establishing like, actually I am enough, and using the same words that she'll use for a friend and talking to herself as if she was her friend, just like she did with Tasha in the quarters. And then after the mixer, we also see her and Ollie like doing life together with her friends, which I spoke about earlier. And when she did have the dinner with her friends, and she mentioned that like her and her friend tend to go out for dinner and they always eat meat, but this time it's a vegan, so they're slowly changing. It did raise a little bit of a yellow flag for me, because I was wondering, are you changing because you feel like you need to, or is it just that you want to kind of learn and weave into his lifestyle and your lifestyle, so have meat dishes when you want to, but also have vegan meals because you're with Ollie, so that it makes it easier for both of you. But it did make me wonder, are you molding yourself into a vegan because Ollie's a vegan, so you want to please him and just eat vegan food, or are you actually just doing it so that your friends could get a sense of who he was and how you would be living a little bit? So it would kind of question mark around that. But I think like she was still being herself in that space. She didn't hide herself away from everyone, though she was very much vocal about how she felt about everything in that space. And we see different parts of her relationship with Ollie. We see them becoming very touchy-feely, we see them very tactile, very playful. And I think this started to happen after the retreat, because I think after the blow up that Ollie and Jasmine had, we see Ollie and Demi have a conversation about what she's been saying to the group and stuff. He didn't come very curious. He came very much like, what did you say? Very defensive. But she kept her cool. She was like, no, I haven't been saying anything. But she still defended her friends. She defended Jasmine because he said, oh, you don't know her, she don't know us. Like, they don't know us like that. And she said, no, I know Jasmine. She's not saying anything out of malice. And really backed Jasmine while still holding how Ollie was feeling. So she was like, what do you need? What do you need in this moment? So I think Demi's very, very aware of what other people need. And I think for a long time before she started the show, she might have been a person who was always tuned into what others needed, but not so much tuned into what she needed. But I think before going onto the show, she had done a lot of work to kind of learn how to speak up for herself, how to enjoy receiving as well, and also learning what was her insecurities and how that insecurity showed up. And I think the finale, when we do see her getting married and giving her speech, we see so much of her praising Ollie for what was going on, but also praising herself for doing what she's done. And it started even at the hen do, when she did notice this change and this shift. And even before then, when she was going for her dress fitting, we see that there was such a negative narrative that she was holding when she did come to, before she came onto the show, about like, these girls are so skinny, I should stop eating these donuts. But instead she was focused on, actually, this is me. Like, I really enjoy being me, and I'm a beautiful person like this, and I really do like the way I look, and I love the way I'm feeling right now. And she couldn't wait to get married. But then when she got to the wedding day, I think the separation between her and Ollie, that space that they had, gave her time to also reflect on all that had happened up until the point that they had split up before the wedding. And I think her not receiving enough validation through phone calls and messages during that time, she felt like she deserved more, because she had communicated that. And she did communicate that whilst they were packing to leave the house. She did communicate that, oh, we should be FaceTiming each other, like, or communicating every day. And she had made it very clear what she needed in that time. But I think the breakdown of that happening kind of made her realize that maybe when the cameras are off of this situation, maybe things will be different, and it wouldn't be as healthy as I would like it to be. Because she had an idea. She went into this experiment having an idea of what marriage is because of her mum and dad, and how they grew up. And she mentioned this to her mum when she's at her dress fitting, which makes me realize, like, the power of having good role models in your life. I think if you do have good role models in your life, you start to see what you would like to be, or what you would like to see in your own life. And not that you want what they have, but there is a sense of appreciation for this is possible, and it makes you work towards that. And I think with her relationship with Ollie, that was the sense that she wanted. She wanted to feel safe in that space, and she wanted to have a relationship like her mum and dad did. So we see that happening, and when that does happen, we're like, wow, that's amazing. So when we do come back to the reunion, and we see that they're no longer together, and Ollie's doing his own thing, she's doing her own thing. She's very happy to call Ollie a good guy. She's very happy to still hold her own in the situation. Just know that just because he's not my guy doesn't make him a bad guy, but he is a good guy who is doing his own thing, and I appreciate what he helped me establish during this experiment, but he's not the guy for me forever. And he was there for a season, which was amazing. And we also see her stand up for herself when it came to Catherine making comments in the confessional about herself. She tells her, I did not appreciate that. And that's where the relationship breakdown happened between the two of them after everything had come out. So we see, so slowly we start to see all these little instances of her standing up for herself and trusting her own voice, which, if you're a people pleaser, you know that's one of the hardest things to do, and you kind of rely heavily on people's validation. But when you get to a certain point, you've realized those validations of other people become so empty that you need to find ways to validate yourself. And I think through this experience, or even before this experience, coming into this experience, those tools were tested and trialed, so that she could use those skills in other parts of her life, to help her grow, not just in her dating life, but in all areas of her life. And we can see her glowing. We can see her really enjoying where she's at and who she is now. And it says it like, I feel like a different woman, a different person coming into this experiment, coming out of this experiment. So working on yourself is so important when it comes to relationships, because you start to see what your triggers are. And just because someone pushes your buttons doesn't mean that they're wrong for you, but it might be that you need to work on those buttons being there in the first place. And sometimes it looks like you sitting with yourself and establishing what my insecurities are. What do I find I'm scared to explore with other people, or I'm scared to expose to other people, and sitting with them and sitting with those insecurities and establishing where they came from. Sometimes insecurities are not birthed from you, but birthed from what other people have said about you, that have developed its own narrative and its own conversation within your head, and is living in your head rent free. So sometimes you need to kind of establish what kinds of thoughts need to be evicted from my head, what kinds of thoughts need to be removed from who I think I am and who I want to be, and how do I bridge that gap between those two people. So yeah, Demi was such a beautiful expression of development throughout the show, and how group settings people act completely different to how they are in personal settings, and how sometimes bridging the gap between those two things could be a little bit difficult for them, but trying to establish where they stand helps them understand what is good for them and what they need. So yeah, Demi was a brilliant example of how to see yourself, self-esteem develop through a show, and it was so lovely to watch and so heartwarming to watch someone go through what she's been through, but still being able to have empathy and compassion for other people, and still praise other people where they are, but know where her boundaries are and where her limits are. So on that note, guys, I am looking to start a new program in January around self-esteem and people pleasing, because I feel like I have been through that journey before, just like Demi has, and sometimes it's very easy for you to get caught up in your insecurities rather than focusing on who you are as a person and what other things you can bring to the table, not focusing just on the comparisons that you continue to develop whilst looking at other people's lives and your own life. So I have decided to start a program, which will be a 6-week program just on living like a community, having chats around these conversations, doing the work to actually establish what is going on. Why do I feel like this? Why is this happening? This will all be online, so if you would like to be part of it, please reach out and I will send the link so that you can be part of it, and then we can go through the 6-week program just to learn more and more and more about our own insecurities, learn about our self-esteem, how to build those things, how to use it in the workplace, relationships, with other people that we love and care for, and how to still be there for those people but also show up for ourselves. So on that note, guys, I am going to love and leave you. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. As you know, Love is Blind US is back on. We're season 7, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys as well. We're a couple of weeks into it already. I would probably, I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to do videos on that as well. I'm just not sure where to start yet, but we'll get there. And I'm looking forward to just exploring those relationships with you too. So I will see you guys all next week. If you haven't, or if you've stayed this long, thank you so much for staying on this long. If you do, please like, comment and subscribe, and we can see you all next week. Take care, guys. Bye.